Hello everyone, I am Teppei Tsuchimoto from Ritsumeikan University, Japan. I would like to present my auto-ethnographic poetry. This poem is written in Japanese, so I will read it in Japanese. たどり着いた足の裏からまっすぐに並んだ石の筋を通して地面から体を通って喉の中に込み上がってくる。懐かしさ。懐かしさは昔の記憶。その懐かしさは昔の記憶なのだろうか。人を頼りに生きていれば仕方のないこと、楽しいことが海に水が跳ねるように下水道のうねりの中で混ぜくられてゆく。それはただの懐かしさではない。庭の無限の境界の上に。The auto-ethnographic poem earlier is about the feeling of stepping over the boundary to enter the garden of my grandfather's house. It is important to notice that this poem shows the boundary of the garden has the intrapersonal infinity. I arrived at my grandfather's house after a long 2-hour drive. The boundary of my grandfather's house is there, where the ground switches from straight stones to smooth concrete. However, this boundary extends infinitely. Memories of falling into the sewer and injuring myself trying to save my little nephew, the warm smiles of my grandfather and grandmother, a dog Malone, the small field where I harvested radishes, the nearby park. All of these are in that border of the garden. The feeling I experience when I arrive at my grandfather's garden can be described as nostalgia, but there is more. The feeling of nostalgia is hypergeneralized and is not memory of the past in the dictionary sense. For me, the garden is everywhere, like an endless seashore, and the feeling is too complex to put into words. In that sense, the garden is affectively generalized, hypergeneralized sign field. According to Walshner, the sign has two forms of generalization. The schematization indicates the process that simply categorizing experiences, left, and the problematization is a process that generalizing while keeping the richness of experiences, right. Hypergeneralization is the process of affective synthesis of these signs where emerging a vague meaning field that overwhelms the human psyche. The garden is deeply significant place in most people's minds, existing as a hypergeneralized field. Problematization and hypergeneralization are key concepts of Jan Walschner's cultural psychology of dynamic semiotics, and it is described with example as follows. The process of problematization involves abstraction of the general meaning from already complex affective experience to field-like generalization, and finally to generalized sign field of the generalized feeling of loss. The original object, the event of the broken vase, is replaced by the general field of feeling of a loss. At the same time, on the side of schematization, the cognitive understanding of the value of the broken object can be rationally contemplated. The affective field-like generalization, problematic generalization, is primarily with the cognitive, schematic counterpart. The poem at the beginning is also interesting, as it is concerned with liminality. The term was proposed by Turner, and being liminal is both spatial and temporal meaning. If we relate this term to the experience of crossing a threshold, from the perspective of cultural psychology, we are moving from the present moment, present space, to the next, towards the future. In a contingent time, that is neither coincidental nor inevitable. From the developmental sense, a person is always operating at the liminal tension between as is and as if, and being on the boundary. The inquiry into the meaning of garden, for one, offers a profound insight into the relationship between personal and collective culture. The process of construction of a garden is to make nature the object in which various liminal, aesthetic, and symbolic activities takes place directly. The term garden includes a multitude of meanings. A garden is a place for recreation, a symbol of power, and for the gardener, a place of work. Alternatively, the feeling of the garden is deeply rooted in people's hearts and has an aesthetic meaning. The discussion of garden here is somehow linked to another gardens all over the world. Originally, Japanese gardens have their roots in China and Korea, which are related not only the two countries, but also to the West through the Silk Road. This is not a matter of country, but of the relationship between the people associated with the garden, gardeners or owners or visitors. In order to access this very human activity of the garden, auto-ethnographic approach is remarkable. It also, metaphorical way, has implications for human development. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
マスクを着用してください。Please wear a mask. 手指の消毒をしてください。Please use hand sanitizer. マスクを着用してください。Please wear a mask. 手指の消毒をしてください。Please use hand sanitizer.
At times, our lives are strongly influenced by invisible entities. Some people are afraid of them and change their behavior, while others disregard them and don't pay much attention to them. how invisible entities touch our territory of daily life. Let me look back on my experience in Japan and West Africa. From 2011 to 2012, I was living in a rural area of Mali. 2 days a week, unique music was played there.
深夜1時ぐらいまで行われてて、それに、一度参加したのをきっかけに興味を精霊信仰というのに興味を持ちました。そこの踊りはもう全然普段の娯楽みたいな踊りとは違って、なんかもう上半身しかこう動かさないんですけど、でそれを何をやってるかっていうとこう精霊を下ろしてきて、で降りた人はこう精霊が話し出す。
Living there and asking people, I gradually came to know about Djinn. I found some of the characteristics of Djinn and how people interacted with them. Beneficial. They can be used for consultation and treatment.
Quand le djinn vient, les choses dans le futur, il te dit ça. Ah, tes collaborateurs japonais, Ousmane, il est en route. Ça dit, elle me fait des révélations que moi je ne connais pas. Donc c'est là, c'est le côté de consultation. Donc quelqu'un qui a des problèmes, quelqu'un qui cherche le bonheur ou bien quelqu'un qui cherche quelque chose, il vient en consultation sur le djinn.
Harmful. Djinn can be a cause of physical or mental illness. In Arabic, the word Majnun is used to mean both a person who has gone insane and a person who has been possessed by a jinn. Expertise.
Mais il y a certaines personnes qui sont en mesure de voir les djinns, qui sont en contact avec les djinns.
C'est comme maître.
Comme maître, par exemple.
Djinn a bɛɛ yan a bɛ bamanankan fɔ a bɛ japonɛkan fɔ a bɛ tubabukan fɔ a bɛ arabukan fɔ Djinn a bɛ yen mɔgɔ min bɛ a kɛrɛfɛ a bɛ référé o de la a b'o esprit ta ka baara kɛ n'o ye donc n'anw fana n'a donna ɲɔgɔn na anw fana bɛ Djinn esprit de ta ka baara kɛ n'o ye.
Types. There are many different kinds of jinn, and they constitute families. Demand. The demand for the treatment leads to employment and wealth. Segregation. There are places that should not be approached carelessly, except for special occasions. Djinn are especially known to live in the bush. Gender. They are often associated with women and childbirth. Norms. They are related to the way things should or should not be done.
La religion musulmane est monothéiste. La reconnaissance d'un seul Dieu, comme chez les chrétiens. Tu dois croire qu'à un seul Dieu. Maintenant, quand tu vas voir le maître Tarabo, en réalité, c'est lui qui connaît, qui sait. Ce qu'il va te dire, c'est la réalité. Et quand tu vas croire à ça, on dit que tu as ajouté quelque chose à Dieu. C'est pourquoi les musulmans ils interdisent.
Culture context dependency. When I returned to Japan, I realized how difficult it was to explain about Djinn.
要するに実際にほんまに精霊があるかどうかとかじゃなくて、その精霊の言葉を聞くことによって、正しい行いをするとかっていうふうな、その結果としてその人間としての生活がすごく良くなるっていうような意味合いとして、なんというかそのシステムの、象徴として精霊を使ってるのかなっていう印象をすごく受けました。
Some people take them as spiritual beings, and others see them in a functionalist way. In both cases, it seemed to me that the reality I felt in Mali was not fully conveyed. The difficulty of this translation was for me one of so-called stumbled data and then abductive experiences. Following Brinkman's discussion of stumbled data that make us surprise, unstable, and influence the way we see things, Mosley called such events abductive experiences.
そういうことに結構生活の自分の行動判断を委ねるような文化の中でちょっと進んで帰ってきて今思うことは、なんだろう、やっぱり僕らで言う多分、科学みたいなもんなのかなっていう、例えば、放射能とかさ、目に見えないじゃないですか、なんか目に見えないけど存在するらしいぞっていうふうに僕ら思うわけですよね。
At the time, around 2014, the psychological impact of the nuclear accident was still strong. Partly because of this, I felt that the reality of Djinn in Mali was similar to that of radioactive materials in Japan. And actually, I was surprised to find that the characteristics of Djinn and their relationship with people overlapped in many ways with radioactive materials. Beneficial. They are used for medical technology. Harmful. Not only physically, but some people were also affected strongly psychologically after the nuclear accident. Expertise.
でその分野に長けてる人、ずっと勉強してきた人、専門知識がある人のことに従って僕らは価値判断をして、でこう汚染されてたら食べないとか、そういう文化だと思うんですけど。
The problem was that even among the experts, there were differences of opinion, and in the end, one had to choose and believe which opinion was the most valid. Types. Family-related terms are often used to describe radioactive materials and nuclei. Demand. The huge energy demand has created a lot of employment and wealth in nuclear power. Segregation. Some parts of Japan are inaccessible up to today. gender. Mothers were particularly sensitive to food contamination, and some of them began to take radiation measurements by themselves. Norms. There has been a lot of discussion about what type of energy we should choose, and more fundamentally, how we should live. Culture, context, dependency. Just as it was hard to explain Djinn in Japan, I found difficulty in explaining radioactive materials in rural Mali. As we have seen, although Djinn and minute radioactive materials are ontologically different, there are many shared features. In the process of living and learning in Mali and observing Japanese society, various dichotomies that I had taken for granted were called into question. Djinn is a cultural entity from the general Japanese perspective, but it is a natural entity in rural Mali. Radioactive material is a natural entity, but it has a cultural aspect in relation to it. Through my abductive experiences, I realized that there's a realm around invisible entities where people negotiate about nature and culture, science and belief, real and fiction, materiality and spirituality, rationality and irrationality, also self and other. Invisible entities touch such ambiguous territory between these dichotomies and affect our lives even without touching our bodies. How do we see the invisible entities after all? How will we continue to live with them?
My name is Naoko Yokoyama, and I'm a graduate student at Ritsumeikan University in Japan. I would like to write an auto-ethnography of my own experience of crossing or staying and the boundary between patients and society with COVID-19 and explain what I felt and thought. This picture are my nurse job and my daughter. This is the background of this content. Basically, only public health nurses work at public health centers in Japan. But there is a situation where nurses work at public health centers only during the time of the COVID-19 due to social demands. This time, I was transferred to the public health center at the request of the community around a university in the Kansai region, and I have been working there since December of last year. It was also before the country declared its second state of emergency, when COVID-19 cases were increasing rapidly. By describing and interpreting the culture of practice that exists within the eye of the presenter who works at public health center under COVID-19, I attempted to label the content of the eye and the complex environment that surrounds it, and to capture what happened at the boundary between the close contact person, the health center staff, and society and I. This auto-ethnography was originally written based on my notebook from December last year to January this year, and I further drew it up as my own trajectory equifinality model. In this way, I thought I could make an unbiased analysis on my own. Here is a schematic diagram of the auto-temp. Inversible time flows from left to right. The bifurcation points along the way are branch points. This is divided into phases, which are pointed out in green in the bottom row. The top cycle is the number of people in close contact person and the 2 months. The bottom phase is a straightforward representation of temp from the left side. Here is a description of temp for each phase. In phase 1, from the beginning of the work to bifurcation point 2, there is prejudice against the close contact person. The public health nurses seem to be busy and it's difficult to discuss work with them. And I feel dilemma because they cannot spend time to listen to the health of my close contact person. In phase 2, I'm involved in the anxiety of close contact person and society. In the background, the number of people infected with COVID-19 suddenly increased in January this year, and I couldn't keep up with my work. And I also had social anxiety, which made me feel depressed because I thought I wasn't being useful. I started to feel better. The scene in pink indicates the transition of my self-transformation. I can see my anxiety objectively. I can get closer to close contact person in my health interview. And close contact person encourages me. In equifinality point, I'm the person, and I made up my mind to continue to support close contact person in my own way, even if it is in a small way. This slide is a summary of what I said earlier. In auto-ethnography, I was able to see how my role in the health center and my inner mind changed as I became able to look at my relationship with my surroundings objectively. I could imagine close contact person position. In COVID-19, the physical line was always there, but the psychological individual boundary was crossed in a transformative way. Or rather, I want the situation. Now, when I gave a preliminary presentation of this content to my peers, I will display here what I noticed. The diversity of race, career, art, language, imagine, health, etc. made me realize my own identity. I felt like I was crossing boundaries by imagining the identity of each position. By listening to my friends' presentations on auto-ethnography, it seems as if I eliminated on my own essence in auto-ethnography. as if in a mirror. Although my experience was tiny in the small world of a public health center, I found objectivity in my relationship with others, a serious problem for me and for society. I found objectivity in my relationship with others, and I was able to realize that I could transform myself. That picture is attention for COVID-19 in Japanese hospital. Since many of my friends are writing poetry, I tried my hard at writing poetry based on my auto-theme. However, it is very difficult to express something simply in a poem. But when I drew it like this, I can see that my inner mind is changing in relation to my surroundings, and that I'm trying to let go and cross the lines I have drawn for my surroundings. Thank you for your kind attention. This picture is mental health attention of telephone in COVID-19.
Thank you for watching my presentation. My name is Yuto Takagi, and I am currently a graduate student at Kyoto University studying disability studies. This time, I would like to give you an overview of the self-documentary film I directed, Boku to Ototo, and introduce the most important scenes of the film. First, please watch the trailer.
久しぶりに弟と会います。ただいま。うい。怖っ。勝手に食べちゃってるんですよね。親が死んだ後、僕がやっぱ見ないかんのかなとか。恋して。恋して。
東京行きたいと思ったって一人で行けんもんね。
そう考えるとちょっとやっぱり切なかったりするんだよな。知らねえよっていう寂しいんですよ。わかんないから。はい。弟がもうなんか燃やそうとしたみたいです。
そうま昨日なんであんなことしたの？
相馬がそもそもどういうことを考えたのかなとかさ、そういうのをこうしっかり一回考えてみんとどこ住みたいね。見えんがね。ずっと寝れんぐらい悩んだよこのことは。もう24年間一回も言えんかったことないよ。ええこと言うたから聞いてよ。おい。This is the front and back of a movie flyer. I will read out the English translation of the film's summary. A young filmmaker has created a family story that is both fresh and tingling. In Boku to Ototo, director Yuto Takagi who is studying human coexistence studies at Kyoto University's graduate school, turns his camera on his younger brother Soma, who is severely mentally disabled. The older brother has been protecting his mischievous younger brother since he was just a child, but now that the younger brother has grown up and is often out of his parents' control, he wonders if he will be the only one who can take care of him in the future. To do so, he needs to know his brother better. So he begins to communicate with his brother through the camera, but in the midst of this, an incident occurs due to his brother's mischief. Will he be able to communicate with his disabled brother? Here is a miracle of cinema achieved by youth, imprinted with the growth of both the filmmaker and the filmed. The producer of this film is Kaoru Ikea. His theatrical debut, Daughter from Rennan, 2002, depicted the reunion of a father and daughter at the mercy of the Cultural Revolution and won the Best Documentary Awards at the Karlodi Valley International Film Festival and many other awards. His second film, The Ant, 2006, was a record-breaking, long-running hit as it delved into the truth behind the issue of Japanese troops remaining in Shanxi province. His third film, Roots, 2012, follows an old woodcutter who loses his son in the Great East Japan earthquake, rebuilds his home, and won the Ecumenical Juries Award Special Mention at the Berlin International Film Festival. His fourth film, Runta, 2015, depicts the heart of the Tibetan people in the struggle for non-violence. This time, I would like to share with you the most important scene of the movie, the scene where I felt I could touch my brother. There is no English translation, but please pay attention to the interaction between me and my brother and watch the scene. もし兄ちゃんに家族ができたらさ、もちろん俺はやけんこれからも相馬のこと隠したりするつもりは全然ないし、いつも夜からさ、その辺はある程度理解してくれる人と一緒になることになるんやろうけど、でもそれと相馬と一緒に住むことっていうのはまたちょっと別やんか。ね。そう。やけんどうしたらいいんかなと思って。だからいずれはね、やけん親も死ぬわけで、兄ちゃんと相馬だけになるやんか。ん？緑ね。キューって何やったっけ？チューブ？寄宿舎？うん、でもそうね。そうそう、学校の寄宿舎に入っとる時期もあったな、半年ぐらいけど。でもあそこはそう学校におる人しか使えんのよ。卒業するやろ、そうね。そう、卒業したら寄宿舎には入れんのよ。そう、入れんのよ。そうどこでも住んでいいよって言うたらどこ住みたいんね。緑園がえん？緑園がえん？寄宿舎がえん？パンチは？違うの？慣れたとこがえんか、やっぱり。寄宿舎とか、緑園とか、自分が住んだことあるとこに住みたい。相馬は、兄ちゃんと一緒に住みたいって言わんかった。親が死んだ後、一人で生きていく覚悟を僕なんかよりずっと相馬はしてるんやなってこの時思った。相馬から僕は僕で兄ちゃんは兄ちゃんでええんやでって伝えてくれたような気がした。The scene is the climax of the film and it's the most important scene. As I confronted my brother through the camera, I realized my life-size feelings and also realized that I had been treating him like a child. He understands most of what we say and is always talking with a few dozen unclear words and hand words to compensate. I wonder if I had talked about myself properly with my brother. For example, I don't talk to him seriously about my love life, like I would talk to my friends, or about my future, like I would talk to my parents. So I don't know how much he will understand or how much he will react, but I'll tell him anyway. I thought that would be the first step to becoming a real brother, not just me as a sibling and my brother with a disability. At the end of the film, I am having a serious conversation with my brother, which is the scene you have just watched. If I get married and start a new family, if my parents die, should I live with my brother or not? As I continue to talk to my brother about these unresolved issues, he said to me, Kishuksha school dormitory, Midorien, the facility where my brother was taken care of when he was in elementary school, and Pansy, facilities to go to after graduating from school. He did not say that he wanted to live with me. As a human being, he was much more prepared to live his own life than I was. Even with the most severe mental disability, my brother had a clear will of his own, and he was trying to communicate it to me. I felt as if he was telling me, may you be content with yourself just the way you are. Since the film is 48 long, it's a pity that the entire film could not be seen in this presentation. The film is scheduled to be released theatrically in Osaka, Kyoto, and Kobe in October this year. In the future, I would like to translate the film into English and submit it to overseas film festivals. I hope that people all over the world will see the film. Thank you very much for watching my presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Okawa. I am a PhD student at Osaka University, and I appreciate a lot for everyone who watching my presentation today. My research field is sociology of education, but today I want to talk auto-ethnography of my life. Actually, I want to share the experience that I have in my life with everyone watching this. And actually, I am Brazilian. I'm a third generation Japanese Brazilian. I was born in Brazil, and I'm living in Japan for more than 20 years right now. So just let me start with the presentation here. And today, the title of my presentation will be Melting Together. And when I start to work with this presentation, I think the best word that comes to describe my experience, my feeling was this one. So I just put this one for here. And one thing that I need to talk first is that in my life, even here in Brazil, in Japan, in Brazil, like there was many boundaries. And these boundaries like actually wasn't like a draw by me, but many of them were like a people around me. So even I'm trying to be a part of some community or like a member of some community, always there was like a kind of boundaries, and that was very difficult for me. Like starting to talk about my life, I was born in Brazil in 1989. And I guess that everyone knows that it was a very major social change in the world, but also like in Brazil, it was a very difficult time, like especially in financial terms. And I was born in not a rich but not a poor family, just like a simple family. But the thing that wasn't usual is my parents was like too young to have me. So as soon as I was born, they just knew that they can't be able to take care of a baby. So for me, I don't have a really strong connection with them. Like for me, my parents was like my grandparents. They who were the took care of me. So for me, my grandparents were my parents and my family. My grandpa was like a Japanese and my grandma was a Brazilian. So actually I have two ethnicity. But honestly, like in my house, I never had something Japanese. So for me, I was just a normal Brazilian boy, Brazilian kid. Like in my life, the only thing related to Japan was my grandpa. But one day, before I get to the kindergarten, my grandpa and my parents went to Japan. Like it was very difficult economy in Brazil, so they had to get to Japan to work to save some money. But actually, I couldn't understand because I saw that Japan was like an imaginary place. But they went to Japan. Like when I was a child, like I look up at the sky and say to my grandma, I think that cloud is Japan. And she was just laughing. For me, Japan is such a place, somewhere up the sky. But after a while, my grandpa passed away in Japan. And it was really difficult for me to understand because he went to somewhere that I couldn't understand, comprehend, and he never came back. I knew that something happened, something sad happened, but I couldn't really understand. I saw everyone crying, but I couldn't cry. And yeah, I couldn't really understand that time. But even after he gone, like I had nothing Japanese in my life, just like ethnicity. Like my grandpa was Japanese, but he is not anymore here. But people were keep calling me like that I'm Japanese, while I had nothing Japanese with me. And when I turned 8, it came to my turn. My grandma told me that we are going to visit Japan, the land of grandpa. And I never imagined that I would go to Japan. And like, it's really funny because she said like in such a easy way, we are going to have a trip to Japan. And that trip is lasting, I think, more than 20 years, maybe. And I never thought that it would change my life in forever. It's really difficult to describe Japan in my life. Actually, there were so many good things, but also there were so many bad things too. But one thing I can say that Japan changed my life in an irreversible way. I can't just get back as I was. In Japan, people kept calling me like as a foreigner, but also Brazilian people kept calling me as Japanese. So I always couldn't understand who I was, who I am. But I think that probably no one could understand who I was. Even so, like people wanted me to be someone that they could understand. For them, I think that it was difficult to understand that there is someone that doesn't fit any of these categories. My life in Japan was kind of difficult. I guess that it wasn't something successful from 8 to 18. My relation with my parents, I tried, but it didn't work out. And actually, I couldn't attain anything, I guess. I really tried hard, but I couldn't get to college that time. But what was difficult, it was that I was always thinking that one day everything would worse, like the hard working one day would worse, and one day everything will be okay. But that time it didn't come to me. So it didn't work very well in Japan. So I just decided to get back to Brazil and hoping that getting back to Brazil, everything will be okay. Everything will be fine. And I was just returning to just a normal Brazilian. But yeah, it didn't happen. And it was really something difficult because I was with a very huge hope, hoping that I would be just normal. But I wasn't possible to be a normal Brazilian anymore. But it didn't mean that I could be a Japanese neither. And yes, Brazil also didn't work for me again, so it wasn't my place anymore. After that, I just came back to Japan again and to try to get the college here again. But that time when I was 19, I already knew that even Brazil nor Japan wasn't my place, but I had no choice to I had no chance to choose a third place. For me, that time, everything was just melting down. A solid thing that I had in my side was all disappearing. And the funny part of life, I think, suddenly, like anonymous acceptance just appeared from nowhere. Not someone who were important in my life just appeared and told me something important in my life. That person said to me like one day that we were just talking. We really just talked for, I don't know, few minutes, maybe a few seconds. And he said that, oh, I think your English is very unique. And I asked him why. And he said that it sounds like you have accent of Portuguese and Japanese, and it sounds really cool. And it was something I never see myself, like I never be accepted in that way. And literally, I even can't understand his name. We just met a day, actually it was like a night. I had I think it was Christmas dinner or something in a friend house. And after that, we never met again. We never talked again. But only that word is staying. It changed really. because I knew that I could just be as I am right now. Like for a long time, I've been thinking that ambiguity is a certain uncertain position. But for me, this uncertain position was the best place to fit. Like people kept asking me who I am. Now, I'm not afraid to not be someone. Now, not being someone means that I don't need to be like someone. And this blurred place, blurred position is something that I was looking for a very long time. Everything just melted together. Everything that lost its form, but that created like a bluer shape on me, a shape that doesn't need to be certain. People may not understand this certainty, but now I finally find my place. And I guess that actually this is a reason that because I'm in the academic field, because I know that many children and young people are suffering in the same position. I'm not saying that it's only in Japan or it's in Brazil, but all over the world, I guess that there's a people having difficulty trying to understand who they are. And many people just want to put you in a certain position, but sometimes it's not a position that we have to be. And for me, someone just one day appeared from nowhere, and just said something and just went, gone. And it was really an important thing for me. And yeah. So I guess that we need to be more like able to understand this way to others. Yes. Okay, so I don't have so much time today. And actually this was my first time to participate in the auto-ethnography conference and my first time to share my experience. So yes, I think it will be interesting if I could talk with people about it and hear how they think about it. Or yeah, yes. Anyway, thank you very much for hearing my presentation. I appreciate it a lot. And bye.